Hi everyone, my name is Sheila Medina, and today I just want to talk about a few of the concepts that I took away from this module. So, the first concept was objectives and how important they are to students. And then the second concept was anticipatory sets and checking for understanding. And the last concept was lesson closure. So, starting off with objectives. They are going to be presented at the start of the lesson. They're going to be put somewhere where the students can see it at the beginning of the lesson and throughout the entirety of the lesson, because they are going to help the students have a goal or an objective for that day on what they are trying to learn, or if they get lost a little bit or confused during the lesson, then they can always look back at that objective and get back on track on their goal. Retsky and Andrews say that objectives can be helpful to students when they are shared openly, because then once it's being said out loud, you're hearing it and you're saying it, then it's going to stay in your mind better than it would be if it's not shared openly. So then once again, that's helping the students have a goal and be focused on that goal for the lesson of that day. And then there's anticipatory sets, and anticipatory sets are basically a short activity or discussion. So that way you can either engage the students and introduce them to the lesson, or to see how much the students already know about what you're about to teach them, get an idea of what the students know about it. And then they're also there to either connect a previous lesson from maybe the day before and then connect it to that lesson of that day. Then there's checking for understanding. So, checking for understanding, it's going to happen during the lesson, and you're going to be seeing if who is not understanding the lesson or who is understanding the lesson. Is it a majority of the class? Is it only a few students? I think that this is really helpful for not only the students but also the teacher, because if the majority of the class isn't understanding the lesson, then that lets the teacher know that they need to teach it in a different way, so that way the students are able to grasp what they're trying to teach them. And Aretsky and Andrews mentioned an example for what could be used for checking for understanding. And they say that having students respond to a question by randomly selecting students. Oh, I'm sorry. Having students respond to a question by writing answers on individual whiteboards. I've seen this happen on my own personal experience, and I can see this happening in a lot of different classes, content areas. And it's something pretty quick, and also a way not to put the students on the spot, and so the teacher can quickly assess, who's getting it and who's not, and how many people are understanding it and how many people aren't. And then there's lesson closure. So it's to wrap up the lesson, and it's going to be a short and effective way to just wrap it up. It could be a short activity or asking them a few questions and having them write down their responses, because this helps them take a moment to reflect on what was just taught, on what was just learned. And when they have that moment to reflect, then it's going to help them retain the information even better and for a longer amount of time. So I can definitely see myself using all of these instructional approaches, just because I feel like that since it's in a sequential order, it will keep the lesson under control. It's gonna emphasize having order in the classroom, and then also it helps as having, a good schedule to follow, not only for the students but also for the teacher. And one of them that I feel like I may have a little bit of a challenge implementing in my content area would be the lesson closure, just because I am an art major, so I'm going to be teaching art. And there are going to be times where an art project, it's going to take more than one class period to complete. And so technically that lesson won't be done until like probably for a few class periods. So I'm going to have trouble closing it off or having a lesson closure every single day just because of that, especially if I end up having to teach, because I know like some art teachers, they're not just teaching, you know, the intro to art, but they may also be teaching the AP art kids. And so those students are preparing their portfolio for the AP College Board submission. So then they're going to be working on pieces, not just for one class period, but they're going to spend a good amount of time on it. So then closing that up every single day may be a little bit of a struggle. I think instead of a lesson closure, when there's like moments like that, that's going to take quite a few class periods to complete your work. I think I'd probably do a reflection closure just to let students, they're still reflecting on their work, but they kind of like reflect on what they were able to do today and how that impacted them, and if that's something they want to continue next class period, continuing the same method that they use that day to create their work. So yeah, that's why I think maybe a bit of a challenge on my part. One question I have for my classmates is, in the reading that we had, Uretsky and Andrews mentioned for the checking for understanding, one example to check for understanding, and that example was the whiteboards. So I understand that for a lot of content areas, maybe the whiteboards may not work. Like for mine, whiteboards, I probably wouldn't use whiteboards in my art classroom, have each student have their own whiteboard basically. Um, and if your content area wouldn't work for that example for checking for understanding, what other way would you check for understanding? Thank you.